Okay, music class. How are you guys doing today? I wanted to go over a few things, and I'm going to show you a little video on the history of rock and roll. So you guys should be all working on your research papers. Remember that if you do not have a copy of your of your research paper, we're going to go to the first week. We're going to click on 6-period music. You're going to open this with whatever PDF file opener you have. I have your assignment here. Of course, I changed that date to April 10th. So you have until next Friday. Not this Friday, not tomorrow, next Friday. Make sure that as you're working on your research paper, if you have any questions, that you email those questions to me at patnewley@gmail.com. You need to write at least 2 pages, so that's front, back. You can do it on Google Docs if it's easier for you, or you can write it in your notebook on paper, take pictures of it, and then email it to me. But we got to make sure that we get these turned in so that we can get you guys some grades and credits. So there's that. Secondly, we're going to go to my YouTube page. I have videos for you here that have been posted. Here's your first one that I posted about a week ago. Then there's another one that I did a lesson for you guys on your research paper prep.
Of music that has...
So make sure that you've watched this video. It's going to help you understand what genre is. And then I also went through a few different genres so that you can have a little information on each of them. And then I also made a video, a different one that discussed music genres also. So make sure that you guys have watched all these videos and started writing your
pop music
research paper, because we got to get these done so we can get you some grades. So this is really the only assignment you guys have had for my class for about 2 weeks. So make sure that you are getting this work done, and email me if you have any questions about what we're doing. So today we're going to watch a little video called The History of Rock and Roll. It's going to help you to be able to understand what rock is, if this is one of the genres that you'd like to choose for your paper. So I'm going to hit play here. We're going to watch this, and then I will be back towards the end and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Lay it on me, Daddy-O. I'm JT Curtis, and this is the history of rock and roll, the 1950s.
Reasons on rock and roll music and why I preach against it, and I believe with all of my heart that it is a contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today. I 100% believe. Why I believe that is because I know how it feels when you sing it. I know what it does to you. And I know the evil feeling that you feel when you sing it.
Well, that evil, feel-good rock and roll hit America in the 1950s and changed music forever. The post-World War II generation loved rock and roll. It was fast, it was fun, and it was controversial.
What is this? This is devil music.
And 60 years later, rock and roll is still going on strong. Well, holding on for dear life. But where did it come from? Well, the roots of rock and roll are pretty complicated and fiercely debated. What was the first rock and roll song?
Oh, tiptoe through the window, by the window, that will become tiptoe through the
No. The first rock and roll record was not that.
Countdown here! Countdown here! What makes your big head so hot?
I'll settle for that. This is Louis Jordan performing his 1946 hit Caledonia, one of the first songs to be referred to as rock and roll.
Walking with my baby, she got great big feet. She's long, lean, and lanky, and ain't had nothing to eat. But she's my baby, and I love her just the same. Crazy about that woman, 'cause Caledonia is her name.
You see, groups like Louis Jordan and his Timpani 5 were really Sorry, hold on a second.
Come on, man! Rock and roll's about guitars and drums and Axl Rose screaming, yeah! And Nikki Sixx drinking heroin out of a fire hose and MTV. And don't go, I'm so lonely.
Okay, maybe I wouldn't go as far as to call Louis Jordan the first rock and roller, but his influence on the genre should not be forgotten. In its simplest form, rock and roll is a melding of blues, country, gospel, and jazz.
From Africa
That's a good point. We discussed that last week in one of the videos.
It's turned into blues and jazz and country music.
The 1940s were still dominated by big band jazz, but their days were numbered when artists like Louis Jordan started performing with smaller groups. In 1949, Louis Jordan recorded a two-part single called Saturday Night Fish Fry, which included the lyrics,
It was rockin', it was rockin'.
and features some electric guitar licks that would later be copied by numerous rock and roll guitar players. Well, the term rockin' was originally a religious term, and it was also a euphemism for sex. Well, that's a bit of a contradiction there.
I know how it feels when you sing it. I know what it does to you.
Quiet, you! Getting back to the topic at hand, what was the first rock and roll song? Well, I don't know about this one either. This sounds more like a 40s big band shuffle. I'm actually... Ooh, now we're talking. This is Wynonie Harris's Good Rockin' Tonight, originally written by Roy Brown. It's considered to be one of the first rock and roll songs. Probably the most obvious reason is because it has the term rockin' in it. But it's also the melding of musical elements, those familiar blues changes, that boogie-woogie piano, and that strong emphasis on the backbeat, augmented by those gospel-style hand claps. The song was later covered by a number of rockers in the 50s, though at the time it was being marketed as jump blues, or rhythm and blues, if you will.
Tonight I'm gonna rock away all my blues.
Take an old Delta Blues song, Robert Johnson's song. Yeah, there's alone in my kitchen. Take the same song, played up tempo, and it's completely different. Yeah, come on in my kitchen. It's gonna be raining outside.
Rock and roll is nothing but rhythm and blues up tempo. And rhythm and blues up tempo is boogie woogie.
Other contenders for first rock and roll song include Jimmy Preston's 1949 hit Rock the Joint, producing an exciting party atmosphere.
I wanna rock and roll. Yes, yes. I wanna roll and rock. Yes, yes.
Gory Carter's Rock-A-While was another song to feature a distorted electric guitar.
Feeling good this morning, I feel like I wanna rock a while.
And a lot of this was... Sorry. Hello?
Yeah, hi, isn't this an episode about the 1950s?
How did you get this number?
It's a YouTube video, it doesn't matter.
Hey, give me that phone. I gotta call my accountant.
Account? You don't have an accountant?
Yeah. What? Hey, Bernie? Bernie, made off?
Yeah, that joke would have been funny in 2017.
Get out of here. Public phone, it don't mean you.
Well, as the 1950s opened, Fats Domino's piano-driven blues record, The Fat Man, became a huge hit, featuring his smooth voice and drummer Earl Palmer's strong backbeat.
Be gone, little bad man. 'Cause I went to right now. All the God that love me. 'Cause I know my way around.
Well, what they call rock and roll now is rhythm and blues. I've been playing for 15 years in New Orleans.
Piano and horns were still the dominant instruments by this time. Jackie Brenston recorded Rocket 88, produced by Sam Phillips for Chess Records.
You women have heard of jalopies, you've heard the noise they make, but let me introduce my new Rocket 88. Yes, it's straight, just one way. Everybody likes my Rocket 88. Baby, we'll ride in style, moving all along.
featuring Ike Turner's band with Willie Kizzard on guitar. A very, very distorted electric guitar. Knowing Ike Turner, he probably kicked the amp so badly it just ended up sounding like that.
Stupid kid! Why won't you make me sound better?
The song was a huge hit and widely considered to be the first rock and roll song. And thus the electric guitar became the main instrument of the decade. The hollow body electric guitar had been around since the big band era, played by Charlie Christian and the like. But it was the 1950s where the instrument became a star in its own right. And manufacturers Leo Fender and Les Paul invented solid body electric guitars.
Well, if anybody asks about me, you tell them I walk down the road.
One of my favorites.
You won't listen to me.
Blues artists in particular found the distorted sound really appealing.
You ain't nothing but
Man, listen to that voice! That's Big Mama Thornton singing her 1953 hit Hound Dog, written by renowned composers Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. Yeah, she's got more balls than most modern-day male singers. You never get to hear a woman like this today. Yeah, Katy Perry is hot, but her voice sounds like a computerized 2-year-old. Imagine Big Mama's voice coming out of Katy Perry. Chicago, Illinois was really the hotspot for electric blues artists. I mentioned Chess Records already, founded by Phil and Leonard Chess, which housed many influential blues artists: Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, John Lee Hooker, Etta James, Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley released his hit, Bo Diddley, which popularized a new beat called the Bo Diddley beat. Yeah, he really liked that name, didn't he? It's all one chord, the lyrics allude to a nursery rhyme. It's totally unique, nothing else sounds like it. In New York City, Ahmet Ertegun founded Atlantic Records and signed rhythm and blues artists such as and a young Ray Charles singing his first hit, Mess Around.
people too hard mess around. They're doing the mess around. They're doing the mess around. Everybody doing the mess around. Now,
all of these artists would become huge influences on the genre. And while most of these artists I've mentioned are rhythm and blues artists, a Cleveland DJ named Alan Freed began calling this new musical genre rock and roll.
This is Alan Freed, the old king of the Moonburners, and it's time again for another of your favorite rock and roll sessions, blues and rhythm records for all the gang in the Moondog Kingdom.
His Moondog show attracted teenagers, both white and black, and launched rock and roll into popularity. Alan Freed organized the first rock and roll concert, which quickly became over capacity and almost started a riot. And soon after, older generations spoke out against rock and roll, including religious groups who considered it to be the work of the devil.
I know what it does to you.
Mostly because it came from black people.
We came along, the whole thing changed. All of a sudden we became a no-no. What is this? This is devil music. I put a spell on you.
This is a very crucial point, not just for the history of rock and roll, but American history. At this point in time, it hadn't even been a century since slavery was abolished, and even then, it didn't seem like much had changed. America was still highly segregated, especially in the South.
This vulgar, animalistic, nigger, rock and roll bop.
That's really where rhythm and blues came from.
come on.
These guys didn't just sing the blues, they lived the blues. Whether singing in the cotton fields or singing in church, the oppressed African American culture found solace in music.
I still say that there's such a fine line between gospel and R&B.
It was uplifting, it was soothing, a form of spiritual healing. And I think that's why the younger generation, white kids included, found rock and roll so appealing. Apart from it being fun to dance to and rebellious in nature, rock and roll and rhythm and blues was just pure emotion. Real, authentic human emotion of people who channel the injustices of society to create art. There's no black or white in this music. You feel it in your soul.
You've got to be colorblind other than whatever moves you, moves you.
I don't know if I'd go as far to say that rock and roll broke down the racial barrier, but it certainly played a pivotal role in American civil rights. It was 1955 when Rosa Parks refused to sit at the back of a segregated bus. And it just happened to be the same year that Richard Penniman released Tutti Frutti. Yeah, critics of rock and roll probably had Little Richard in mind when they started calling it devil's music. Known for his soulful voice, his hard driving piano, and for being completely crazy. Man, Bo Diddley looks scared out of his mind right there. But Tutti Frutti is a classic rock and roll record. It also features a great sax solo by Lee Allen. God, he looks like he's having an orgasm on the piano. Yeah, Bill Haley looks into it. While the song was a big hit, Pat Boone covered the song and achieved greater success with his version. Wow. This is so